So I'm the executive director of Rochester Roots. It's an organization that was established in 1991 as a not-for-profit organization. So I work with Montessori school, a Montessori school in the city of Rochester. It's pre-K through 6th grade, and we do a lot of team learning, so integrating young students with businesses and universities within the community. We use living systems first and foremost as the foundation for the learning experience of the students. And because everything we do on this planet will affect our living systems, and it's the living systems that also affect how we live on this planet. So there are over 10 trillion living organisms that support one vertebrate. So we have to be very mindful of our living systems when we impact them with technology. And so I'll get into this. When I think of living systems, when working with the kids, I think of the soil and I think of the seeds. So we have a belief and a philosophy to use only heirloom seeds, and because we can save the seeds and we can also maintain the diversity of our seed world. So we grow heirlooms, we save heirlooms, and we replant those every year. They also adjust to the changing environment, and again, support genetic diversity. When I started working with the Montessori school, they were in a different location, and we used an abandoned greenhouse. So for 30 years, a greenhouse at a high school went unused, and we turned that into a plant production facility, working with the students to make their own potting soil and to grow the seedlings that would end up in school learning gardens. Those seedlings were then transported to their own school garden plus another school within the city school district. This is a half-acre urban farm in the city of Rochester, and it's been in production since 2005, originally funded through a USDA Community Food Projects grant. That garden and the work that we're doing in urban agriculture attracted sustainable intelligence. Don Sweet will be speaking at the next session on education and talking more about the theory behind the work that we're doing. Don's contribution to our work is influence modeling. So the city of Rochester, like Detroit, like Buffalo, like Chicago, has a lot of abandonment. So the city has downsized from a population of over 300,000 to 200,000. With that, there's a lot of abandonment, there's a lot of foreclosures. So the city has been removing vacant homes and then considering what to do with the land that's left behind. So an initiative was put in place to do a feasibility study to see if it's viable to turn these vacant parcels into green infrastructure, whether it's a community garden or rain gardens or pathways that have a lot of plants. So there were over 3,000 vacant parcels of land in the city of Rochester at this time. Sustainable intelligence, whenever we start a new project, we do influence modeling. So sustainable intelligence goes to the community, works with the community, and asks a question. In this case, if the city of Rochester supported urban agriculture and community gardening, how would that improve your well-being? That elicits stories from people, it elicits an experience rather than their own personal agenda. So influence modeling is strictly experience-based. How would that affect your well-being if this were to happen? Out of this, there were 7. Don starts to see a pattern in what people are saying, and though that resulted in 7 well-being outcomes. So people were saying that it would have a financial impact, it would have an employment impact, education, health, ecosystem, public safety, and a sense of community. Rochester Roots was a part of this study doing the technology, growing technology research. I realized through this that I could focus on education deeply focus on education and affect the rest of the system. So an influence model has a causal effect. If you work in one area of it, it will affect the other areas. Out of this study also, we developed a framework focused on building a healthy urban food system, which has 4 components: food education, food processing, food distribution, and food production. So you can take a student from food education or take a community from food education and then begin to do product development, entrepreneurship, fast food trucks, farmers markets, etc., to start developing the economy around a healthy food system. And then if individuals are interested in the agricultural component and growing the food, providing them with a vacant parcel of land to start training on, and then continually scaling up by getting them involved in a large-scale farm. Simultaneously, that research, we got funding through the Rochester City School District and other local foundations to design a community learning center and a learning environment. That also began with influence modeling. So Don and his partner Steve Tylock approached the city school district and asked the question of students and teachers who have been working with us. If the city school district was built a community food system learning center, how would that affect your well-being? There are 4 high-level outcomes that came out of that. Teachers and students said that it would affect decision-making for well-being, so that students were starting to make better decisions to improve their own well-being. It had social relationship building outcomes, experiential learning, and academic achievement. That resulted in the design of a building. So rather than going in and saying, hey, this is the building, what do you think of it? We sought to understand what outcomes we could get out of designing a building that would support well-being. So this learning center has 12 laboratories. I'm going to show this on the next slide. And then that building, which is children. So that here's the school that it was designed for. Here's the building, the learning center, and then here's a learning environment that was built around that learning center. Together, there are 24 learning laboratories to help improve well-being, and we can also demonstrate the entire food system on 2 acres of land. So the point was to retrain the community in how they thought about food and bring them closer to understanding completely the food system. So here's a greenhouse, there's a kitchen behind it, there's an entrepreneur center, a science lab in the center, distribution center, and then there's other learning laboratories within that. And then outside of it, there are 12 different learning environments. So there's a high tunnel, rain garden, permaculture beds, vertical growing, in-ground growing, there's raised beds, cold frames, etc. I'm not going to spend much more time on that one, but that really gives you an idea of where we're heading as an organization. We want to develop a learning center and learning environment in every quadrant of the city of Rochester, and then expand that across the country. Let me just go back to this. So after this study, we started delving deep into the technology. So this is a high tunnel, plastic-covered hoop house that's used to extend the growing season in cold climates. We worked with Cornell University. We were granted a high tunnel. The students had to build this themselves and put it together, put the pieces together, and then begin to use the high tunnel, and without much input from Cornell University. So we had to learn experientially how to use a high tunnel, how to extend the growing season without there being a lot of education around it. That was intentional because Cornell didn't want to come in and say, this is how you do it and this is the only way to do it. but it was important that we learn through our own personal experience so that we can make changes and adapt it as necessary for the unique environment that we were in within an urban area as opposed to a rural environment. The High Tunnel attracted the Rochester Institute of Technology multidisciplinary senior design team who went into a full year of research, working with students at my school and at Clara Barton School, which is one of the schools that I work with, to design an adaptable high tunnel that functioned well for an urban environment. For example, the plastic-covered high tunnel that we originally got was poked, the community poked holes in it, so it released the air and it made an unsightly high tunnel. So I needed, and the other challenge was I was in the high tunnel once and somebody was shooting BBs through it, so I was at risk. So I needed more substantial side panels to resist BBs. I haven't said that our schools are in very high poverty areas of the city of Rochester. In this particular neighborhood, about 90% of the community members live at or below poverty. So there's some unrest within the community. So this high tunnel has adaptable features with windows that open and close. It collects rainwater. And the important thing to note about the high tunnel is that when you apply technology over a living system, you've now cut off the free resources. You've cut off free resources of rain. You've reduced the amount of sunlight that can enter. So we sought to collect the rainwater that came off the plastic roof and then irrigate that back down and into the soil. That was an adaptation that I haven't seen in a high tunnel, and something that we worked with RIT to innovate. So I've worked with a Montessori school since 2004. I don't know if any of you know much about Montessori, but it's very hands-on and a little bit of a different learning techniques when working with students. So they're very mindful of childhood development and being really paying attention to the individual nature of the child. So when the school moved to a new location, we were given a science lab. So we brought the outdoors inside. With that, we wanted to start working with the teachers on professional development. So we focused on curriculum that integrates not only the Common Core state standards, but STEAM, or science, technology, engineering, art, and math, entrepreneurism, and sustainability principles. Like we've done with all our research projects, we do influence modeling first. So we work with the teachers to develop our curriculum frameworks. In this case, we focused on how a student can develop through a garden-based activity, and then allow the teachers to provide their experiences on how a garden-based activity could integrate with the learning standards. I'm not going to go over in detail on all of these. We did that for what is soil, so an influence model on soil. Teachers can use these then to develop their own lesson plan. So it's simply a framework to develop their own lesson plans. This is on what is composting, what is a worm bin, and what are soil dye t-shirts. And I'll get into these in 2 minutes. Okay. We use an adapt card, so if a teacher comes into the classroom, they have a card that says these are the lessons that we're learning right now. And I provide a lesson in relation to what they're learning now, a hands-on lesson in relation to what they're learning in the classroom. During this practicum, we also brought in Cornell University, the soil health team at Cornell, so we could learn how to take depleted soils within an urban environment and regenerate them using free resources and natural techniques and organic techniques to improve the soil. This is our urban sustainability laboratory. It's a high school laboratory that we have adapted for an elementary school. We focus on sociological, ecological, and technological systems and have the kids do influence modeling around those three systems. And that's what it looks like, just the basic framework for modeling. Bringing science to life. When I work with the students, I do modeling. So I'll sit with a big piece of brown paper on the floor and I'll ask them what is the system of science and have them tell me what they think science is. So this is an influence model that was done with first and second graders, and this is what they know about science. Whoops, got ahead of myself there. Okay. Boy, that really jumped forward. We also do influence modeling. This is a system of natural resources from a child's perspective. That all then gets integrated into entrepreneurial projects. So there's an influence model and then an activity, an experiential activity. In the soil dyed t-shirts, we have the child, which is the social system. We have the technology, which is the rubber bands and the construct of the t-shirt. And then we have the soil, which is the ecosystem. So I seek to find an activity that can integrate not only academics, but those social, ecological, and technological systems. This is System of the Red Wiggler. We allow students to explore to the depth that they are capable of exploring, and we follow their interest. So it's a vermicomposting and worm composting bin. We do paper making with recycled materials, and in particular, recycled blue jeans. I buy linters and then we form them. This is also a project in biomimicry, so understanding, if the students can understand, we introduce the students to paper wasp nest, and paper wasps actually use a similar technique to how we make paper. We've learned from paper wasps how to make paper by turning it into a pulp and then forming it into the shape we want. I have an after-school program called Bringing Science to Life, where the students self-determine an individual or a team project that's focused on improving well-being and sustainability of their community. So there's a story seed project. There's a game in development called The Perfect Stew. We had students who wanted to develop ice cream. So it turned out to be the healthier product was a sorbet using fruit juice, fresh fruit and fruit juices. We have a lip balm and skin salve product that's made from plant materials grown in the garden. We work with RIT. We're working right now with RIT to develop a skin salve and lip balm assembly line, production line. The students and the university are connected, so the university actually comes into the classroom and works with the students. Here we're using a straining system. We're testing out a straining system that's going to go into the assembly line. And then this is the concept for the final product, which has actually been built and will be delivered tomorrow. And the students will start using this. We also have a horticulture lab that we're developing with RIT. And the students are doing modeling in the classroom. They're learning how to expertly weigh their soil so that when they get this lab, they can start testing and contrasting and comparing soil type, seed type, lighting, and changing variables to see what conditions will create healthier and more nutritious food. That's the concept for the horticulture lab. These students wanted to learn about sensors, and so we brought in RIT to work with the students to help them develop their a 3D printed robot and sensors that will monitor plant health. And we also designed 2 phone apps, a growth simulator and a data collection so that they can use their sensors to collect data about their plants. This student in particular, Subhas, wanted to create a sensor pad, he called it. So here's his concepts for what the sensor cover would look like and how he thought the sensor would work. He also creates influence models around what, again, how the sensor is going to function and what it will do to improve well-being. We connected these students with RIT, Electrical Engineering Department, and they're using a freshman level analog discovery kit where they're learning how to build their own sensors. Here are the 2 young boys that are just fascinated with electricity and sensors. They do video conferencing with a professor who now lives in New Mexico. They create PhD posters. So I always have the kids presenting. In this case, they're presenting at a science fair. So just like I'm presenting here, a little nervously, but they have to stand up and present at a very young age their knowledge. And what we're currently working on is system dynamics modeling. So we work with the students rather than go in and say, here's the system dynamics model. We develop it with them and have them test it out. So it's an iterative process working with young students to develop these models. So JJ is another student of mine. This is his model in relation to the social, ecological, and technological systems. We have them go through a sustainability framework where they have to discern the patterns within their system, the boundaries, the philosophies, the values, the uncertainty, and the trade-offs. We've made that more sophisticated. From this, it was easy for the kids. We said, well, let's make it a little harder. We'll give them the real, words: temporal, cultural, economic, and get them to think at a deeper level. We brought in Naveed Najari from Arizona State University, who's working with the students on developing the system dynamics model. This is a rough draft of having the kids think through those 7 well-being outcomes over the course of 5 years. We realized they could do that very easily. So there's, first of all, it's social, there's thinking through the product ecologically and technologically. And then we said, well, if you can think it through 5 years, we're going to make you think it through 15 years. And they give it value statements. Or they rate the outcomes of their product or service over the course of 15 years by its impact. Is it a low impact or a high impact? And then it gets translated into system dynamics model so the kids can see whether they're improving well-being. And now we're looking to expand into the community. How can we use the student products, taking that green, the green land that's available, and integrating the student products with households so that the community can start supporting the youth and their sustainability education. These are our partners, not-for-profit, for-profit, and business partners. And many funders support this work.
Bruce Springsteen?
Bruce Springsteen,
Nice.
Artists Against Hunger. He's got a program. And there's my contact information. Sorry,
Probably fit in one quick question,
Yep.
maybe 2.
Just too quickly, it's
Sure.
year-round, so a lot of the focus is in outdoor gardening. I'm wondering what happens during winter. And the others, you mentioned high tunnel, but what's high? What's the end of that?
There's a lot of different names. Greenhouse, hoop house, high tunnel.
The difference
This-
is the high tunnel you can stand up, the low tunnel you can't stand up.
And year-round, so I'm in the schools from September through June. So in the winter, we're bringing the living systems indoors. And then during the summer, it's a lot of volunteer groups come and help maintain the gardens during the summertime.
One quick question. This is not really a question, but this one makes me want to go back to school.
Right? Yeah, it's very engaging for the kids. Yeah, very engaging for the kids, and they're advancing cognitively at a much faster level than if they didn't have this program. So we were not afraid to introduce them to very kind of high level, very complex concepts, and students are already system thinkers. So it's very easy for them to grasp. Their brains have not been siloed yet. They're very curious. So introducing this at a very young age will excel sustainability education once they advance into a job or into a university.
Just really quick, have you been tracking the progress of the children like as they go into high school and where they end up in college, and if this is
It's
they go into science.
Yep, it's difficult to do with all of the students, but I have 2 students. One is now in the Peace Corps in Tanzania. She's working with HIV patients and developing urban agriculture projects to help with their nutrition. Very, very successful. She worked with us for 8 years.
Okay.
So I know that there's possibility for students to advance and to support sustainability and well-being within the global world. Another one of my students has his own business. It's a plant-based business and catering business. So the students that have stayed with us and worked with us longer, beyond the elementary school years and got into internships, have excelled in doing work around, again, sustainability and well-being.
Thank you very much.